everyone, I want to take a minute today to talk about top stitching because I know this is sort of a daunting thing for a lot of people. Some people find it intimidating or they feel like they just can't get it right. So I have a couple of pieces of scrap vinyl here that I'm going to just stitch together and then go over some tips that I have for top stitching. I still have my red thread in here from my tutorial bag that I will be posting next Friday. Which is a week from today. That is my newest bag pattern. And there's been some comments on the sneak peek about, finding top stitching difficult. So let's just take a few minutes and I will go over some tips that I have for you. Now I have moved my camera pretty close and gotta say it's not easy to sew on this thing with a stool in front of my legs, so I can't reach the leg lift for the presser foot or anything. But anyway, let's jump right in here. So we have our two pieces of material that are sewn together, or two pieces of vinyl, and for the particular pattern that I'm releasing, you're going to be pressing your seam allowances open and top stitching down both sides. So a couple of tips to get your seam allowance here to stay where it's at is, number one, you can place it down on your deck with the two halves open on the end, and you can start top stitching and stop every few stitches and lift it up and just spread it open and put it back down. Now when you stop, make sure you're stopping with your needle down. This way your work isn't going to move on you. Okay? Now another thing you can do is what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grab some double-sided adhesive, and this will work great for holding open your seam allowance. You don't have to do this, but I will tell you that it can and does save you a little bit of time and a little bit of fiddling with your material. So I'm actually putting it right on the seam allowance side. And I'm going to do that on both sides. And then just give that a good press down. And starting with one side, just take off your, well, maybe. Starting with one side, remove your adhesive backing. And then press open. Now I'm not pushing it open like so, I'm pressing at each spot just in case my vinyl has a little bit of stretch. And I don't want it stretching. I want it to go straight out. So then I can kind of rub my finger down it to kind of press everything down. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Just remove the backing. Second side's a little bit easier to press open. So now that I've got my back pressed down, I'm going to give this a good burnish so that it stays down. It's a lot easier. I don't have to fiddle with it while I'm top stitching. Okay, so now let's go on to top stitching itself. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to start working with a longer stitch length here. Now, I like to go up about 4 ticks on my wheel over there, and I'm going to drop my needle down just at the edge of the material. Now, top stitching does not require you to backstitch. It is not a structural stitch. It is strictly for decorative purposes, but I'm a goofball and sometimes still backstitch. But one of the things that I want you to focus on, and I'm going to go ahead and bring my light down here a little bit more so that you can see. Let's take that off so it's a little bit brighter, or not. Let's see if I can get a little more light over here for you. Okay. So if you look for the compound walking foot machine, I use this side of the center foot. So there's 2 feet. There's the middle foot and the outer foot. Now, if you're using a domestic machine, what you can do is on your presser foot, and let me grab one of my extra presser feet over here. So I just grabbed a random foot out of there. What you can do is Either use a marking that is on the foot or take a Sharpie and make a little mark that is really visible to you. So I could come in here and just put a little mark on there at the distance from where the needle goes down, where I want my top stitching. And then what I'm going to do is line that mark up with that seam on the material. And I never watch the needle when I'm top stitching. I'm always watching that mark in front to keep it lined up with my seam. So don't look at your needle because that's going to make it more difficult. Watch in front of your foot. So I'm going to sew a few stitches here. And I like to stop every few stitches. I'm not going fast, I'm going very slow. And I'm just going to keep this edge of that center foot lined right up on the seam. Even if you feel that you have to take one stitch at a time to get your top stitching, eventually you're going to be able to speed up and go a lot faster because you're going to get used to it. I will say I hate the phrase practice makes perfect because nobody is perfect, but practice does make better. So the more you practice, the better you will become at it. And it's not a race. Take your time, even if you have to do one stitch at a time. And make sure everything is lined up as you go. Then that's what you do. You don't have to be the world's fastest sewer or anything like that. And you can see there that my line of top stitching is nice and straight. So I hope these tips will help you a little bit if you're feeling intimidated by top stitching, especially if you're going to get my pattern that's coming out next Friday, because it does have top stitching on both sides of every single exterior seam. So I can't wait to see what you make, and I will see you next time. Bye!